And we are live.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Addicted to the Q YouTube podcast. This evening, we have our guest is Bill Purvis with Chicken Fried BBQ from the great state of Texas. You're down in Houston, is that right, Bill?
Yeah, I'm just a little north of Houston, Magnolia, Texas. So
Okay,
it's about 45 minutes, hour north of Houston. So
okay.
yeah,
Houston's big enough, you just kind of take over that corner, that bottom corner of the
it
state.
is. It's locatable, for people outside of Texas. So
There you go. There you go. That's kind
I
of
always,
like
I always say the whole state of Texas is big. Like whenever we drove back from Galveston, I'm pretty sure it was 8 hours just to get out of Texas before we got home.
That's about right. That's about right. Well, Bill's got all your trophies in the background there. That's always a cool look. I've watched a few of your podcasts, and I love the backdrop and how you do everything in there. No cocktails this evening for me. I had too many last night, and I got to get up early tomorrow, so I won't be able to do that this evening. So if we'd have done this last night, I'd have been in rare shape. That's for sure.
Be like Aaron Stauffer on his show that night. Woo!
Oh man, Aaron was a mess, huh?
That was a good one.
I
That was
love
funny seeing
that
him.
guy, though. He was awesome. So
Well, Bill, thank you for taking the time to come on and join us this evening. When we've got a few different topics we want to cover with you. I guess I'd like to talk about. I mentioned it briefly. Your podcast that you started. You started that not so long ago here, right? You were on what, 6 episodes right now?
We're on number. This week will be number 6. Yeah,
number 6, and that's Chicken. I love the Chicken Fried. I guess what made you decide to want to do that? Throw another thing on your plate to do and dive into that.
Well, I mean, as you guys know, I'm selling rubs. I've come out with a new brine, so I'm selling barbecue products. So
Yeah.
I also sell classes online. So man, all I do all week long is talk to guys about barbecue, and the competition community isn't extremely large, and I think for anyone that is, in my position where maybe they've got some products out, the goal would be to try to get it into the backyard competitor. And I had I have a YouTube channel as well as Facebook and all that. And I noticed that most of the followers that I have on the YouTube, man, are probably more backyard cooks as opposed to my Facebook friends and my Facebook and Instagram. A lot of those are competitors that, I see week in and week out. So I thought, well, man, I want to expand my product line. I want to expand my brand, if you will. And man, YouTube doesn't cost anything. It's free.
Yeah.
There's no charge for it. And man, I'm already having conversations all week long, man. And man, some of the people I run around with and hang out with are, pretty comical. So I thought, well, why not just, man, take an hour out of every week and, throw something together. And I feel like a lot of cooks that are listening to podcast or, I just feel like, man, they're trying to pick up whether it's a new cook that's, there's a lot of new teams entering competition barbecue. So man, a lot of them are trying to pick up a little nugget here or nugget there that might, turn their 10th place rib into a first place rib or,
Yeah.
So some people, man, like Aaron Stauffer, man, they'll share it all. And man, he'll let you, if you just talk to him, you can shig everything you want off of him. And others are a bit more closed, but I figured I would name it Chicken Fried with the intent that, we want you to give up something to make, to make people that tune into it get a little, a little nugget or two if they listen to the show, if you will. But
well, what I love about it is it reminds me of those Friday evenings at a comp when everybody's sitting around kind of chilling around the solo stove, having a cocktail, and you're just ribbing each other a little bit, and you're like, oh, it's kind of the subtle way of, hey, what are you doing over here with this and that? And that's what I loved about it. It's really good that way.
And I think that's probably going to be a challenge with it because for the most part, most of the guests that I've had for the first 5 episodes are people that I know really well, and people that I've hung out with at a Solo Stove on a Friday night, and
Yeah.
we've jabbed at each other one way or another, or but as the show progresses, if it does, man, sooner or later I'm going to get people on that maybe I don't know as well, and the energy may be a little different. If you're just having someone on that maybe you haven't spent Friday nights with, or both got your ass kicked at a competition, and you've got a bit of a history. A lot of the guys that I brought on, man, I've got some history with them, so
Yeah.
I talk to them on the phone. I mean, my phone, my phone rings pretty regularly from barbecue guys, and so much so my wife's like, "Can we not talk about barbecue?" So
Sounds like all of our households.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, but man, so far it's been a lot of fun. This week I'm gonna have Robert Smith on. He just won Rodeo Austin, so and he's a complete. I've known Robert forever, and man, he's a complete. He's a hot mess himself. So it should be. Who knows what we'll get out of him, but we'll see what we can squeeze. And man, to some degree, I think there's been some episodes where, man, I think all we've done is just jam on each other. No one's gotten anything, we're just giving each other a hard time,
Well, that's what separates it though. And there's a lot of great podcasts out there. I mean, I know, like when I do my morning walks, or when I travel in sales rep, so I'm on the road a lot, I'll just listen to podcasts, and there's nothing wrong with it, but a lot of them seem to be the same format, the same talking to, comp guys, and it's the same questions. And that's why
right.
I enjoy yours as a little bit different twist. We've tried to we're doing some different conversations, different questions when we do ours. And that's what I enjoy about it. It changes it up a little bit. So,
yeah, I mean, Phil was like, "Hey, man, what's the script?" I said, "Bro, we don't have a script. We're going, we just don't, there's no pre-planning. There's no, man, just turn it on and let's go. And let's just see where it goes, and I think the episode Brad was on, he was completely trashed when we queued on the mic. So you get what you get, he was pretty hammered, and he kept looking down and, "Hey, I'm tying my shoes." "Man, you're not tying your shoes. You're falling asleep,
Yeah.
So,
that was
yeah, we're pretty unscripted. So, man, it is what it is. So,
go ahead, Brad. I think you were.
I was gonna say, it seems like West Garrett gets the majority of the things directed at him. The funniest thing was when he told Chris Schaefer about his 6 podcasts that he did, and then
man, I love Wes Garrett. He's another great friend, and man, he's just like that on the phone when you call him and you're talking to him. He's constantly, and man, I'm just like that to him, and I'm sure so is Schaefer. We all give him a hard time, but at the end of the day, man, we all love the guy to death, and man, it just makes it fun, So, man, I love having Wes as the producer and as the punching bag, and man, I got to think he loves it too. So, yeah.
thank goodness YouTube goes up to an R rating.
Is that what somebody said?
Yeah, that's what somebody commented. Like the other night, whenever we had Addicted to the Queue After Dark at the airport.
Oh yeah. Well, let's talk about another. I mean, we're talking about camera and stuff like that. You've been on Barbecue USA, Bill.
Yep.
How? I guess talk about that experience from. Not necessarily how you got on it and stuff. I think everybody kind of understands that process, but talk about having all the cameras around and the different the people coming in and out of your trailer when you're in the middle of your process and stuff. How did that affect you, or how did you view that, or did it not bother you at all?
Yeah, it didn't really bother me. Man, it didn't bother me at all. I mean, they were really the camera crews. Man, they were all super nice and super respectful, but if anything, it made me stay focused more on my cook, just because, I'm not sitting there, shooting the breeze with Fred talking about something. We all got camera crews rolling around on us. So, it kind of kept me at my camp, I didn't really necessarily leave my camp. And, I think it just kept me more focused, knowing that, man, and it wasn't like the crew was there the whole time. There was like 6 of us, and they had 6 different teams, and they had 3 camera crews. So the camera crews were kind of bouncing around. If they weren't at your camp, they were at your neighbor's camp. And, and then they would come by. Hey, are you going to do anything? Man, I'm fixing to wrap ribs. Oh, okay. We'll be there. And man, if they showed up, they showed up. They would, they would ask questions, because there was, they had, I guess, little assistants that would kind of check in to see, and then they would come and tell you, hey, we're going to, and it wasn't like much of a notice, as we're getting ready, turn-in's about to start. Hey, Michael's going to be over here for chicken, or he's going to be over here for ribs. So, because even with him, he, man, there's 6 teams and there's only 4 turn-ins, right? So he can't be it. It's not like he can be at every single, so I think I had him for pork, and I think pork and brisket. I know brisket for sure. So, but yeah, it was, but no, man, it was, man, the crew. And of course I've been on a couple of episodes, and it's the same crew. So
is it really? Okay.
Yeah, it was the same camera crew. There was different producers, because a lot of that work, I think, is subcontracted. But, the guy that does the lights, the guy that does the sound, and the cameraman, a lot of time were the same. It's just kind of maybe the producer sometimes, would, and it was interesting talking to those guys too, because, man, they do a lot of Food Network stuff. So, they're like, man, we're doing barbecue. Last week I was doing, the Housewives show, or, they're doing some other kind of show. So, man, they were loving it. They were loving eating all the barbecue as well. So.
Oh yeah. So I was at the very first episode they filmed here in Kansas City in Olathe. I was at Olathe, and it was interesting, Fergie and Joe and Randy, and everybody else was on one far side of the parking lot, and Van was just down from me. So the camera crew you're right, they back and forth, and it was freezing cold that day. I think we had snow that day, I think, in Kansas City, and these guys had just flown in from LA, and we were making fun of them, DeWitt and I are drinking a beer, like, come on guys, what's wrong with you? They're like, this is cold. And we were just laughing about that. In fact, we were standing there talking. Michael Simon walked up, and that was the first time I had met him. And he's like, it's freaking warmer in Cleveland than it was here. It was but it was hilarious. But they were, like you said, they'd go back and forth. They would talk to everybody, kind of, hey, are you doing something? They'd shoot a little scene here and there. So it was definitely professional camera crew guys, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, they were, man, the turnaround time I thought was really quick from the time they filmed everything and actually, edited it and put it all together and then got it on TV. I thought I was really impressed at how quickly they were able to edit all the footage. Now, too, we didn't know going in, they're filming 6 of us, and we had no idea that maybe one person or 2 teams could get cut on the editing room floor. So but even still, I was really impressed at how quickly they got it all edited and put it out there. And man, I thought the show was great. Of course, man, I'm biased, I want it, but I thought they did a really good job as far as showcasing what we did. And they didn't try to make us do it. They didn't try to make me or anything fabricate anything. It was all very natural. So
well, that's what it definitely looks like, especially those of us that know what it's like to be in a trailer. You can tell nothing's scripted. It's just conversations compared to some of these other little shows that have been on different networks and stuff.
It is barbecue, it's competition barbecue, which is great.
I've enjoyed it, and I think it's pretty neat to watch them. I'm glad finally something's there to fill that void that Barbecue Pitmasters left years ago, so
right.
Yeah.
Well, you've had a couple episodes now, so are you going to start your own Chicken Fried Discovery Channel?
Man, I would love to. I would love to, but man, I don't think the ratings are there for me just yet. So, I can do a YouTube video and get 100 views. It's far from the 500,000 views they got on the show. So. And I don't know if they're going to continue because there's really been no talk of season 3. They did 2 seasons, and I haven't heard any chatter within the community that, because usually, like even on season 2, different teams were being interviewed. I would get messages for teams because I was on season 1.
Yeah.
Asking me for tips of, hey, we're being interviewed by the casting company. You got any, a lot of teams would reach out to me because they knew I was on season 1.
Yeah.
And I haven't had anyone reach out to me going, hey, the casting team, is this real? I would get that too. They would get emails and want to know, man, is this really real? Because there's so much spam and stuff that's out there. Which, man, I mean, like I said, I haven't heard anything. It's a shame that, man, it'd be nice if if they would have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons, keep going. But
yeah, well, the company I know that does the casting company, usually I was getting email because I did an interview because I actually reached out to Joe Pierce before my interview. I said, hey, Joe, you've done a lot of TV. What, and he's like, just be yourself. He goes, just you do what you do. And, you know, it was funny. I didn't get picked, but my smokers or myself were on there. I don't know, 5 or 6 times. I was nice. I was like, I was on the show without being on the show. So
right. You should listen to Chris Schaefer talk about being on the show. He was, the producer told him, hey, sir, could you please move?
That's about right for Schaefer. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
That sucks.
Yeah.
So you're you're in Houston, well, north of Houston. Have you been like down there your whole life, growing up, born, bred?
Yep.
Okay.
So I was born in Houston and, lived here my whole life and like surrounding Houston, if you will. I did do a couple of years in Chicago in my early 20s, but man, I got back to Houston as quick as I could. So back to Texas.
I mean, you still carry a gun in Chicago.
I know. It's legal. But man, it's cold in Chicago, man.
Yeah,
but like, in Texas, it's hot 9 months out of the year or 10 months out of the year. And in Chicago, I feel like it's freezing for 10 months out of the year.
That's about right. Yes.
6 feet of snow. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I was like, man, does this stuff ever stop? How long does winter last? I mean, God. I thought snow was cool at first, but then it was like, man, this is horrible. So
we got family down in Houston. We go down there 2-3 times a year just to see them get away from Kansas City weather in the winter.
Man, now see, Kansas City, I think would be nice because, I mean, you guys probably, I kind of like Kansas City a lot. I feel like, man, you get to experience all the seasons. You get summer, you get spring, you get fall.
Sometimes we get it all in a week, like this week. It was 85 today. By Thursday, it's going to be rain, maybe chance of slight snow, 40 degree. I don't know. It's going to be,
But how many months out of the year would it snow in Kansas City? Would you get like 3 months?
Maybe. That's pushing it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's more than cold.
It's typically cold. I mean, 85 in March, February is very unusual for us. It's normally 50. I mean, tolerable. So
right.
It's the teens in the winter. That's why we go see family in winter.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I had a buddy from Houston, and I asked him where his ice scraper was when he came to college, and he's like, "What ice scraper? We don't ever scrape ice in Houston." He said, "If we do one day, we use our credit cards just to get it off, and that's good enough."
Man, if we have ice in Houston, which we do about every 3 or 4 years, man, the whole place shuts down. School's shut. There's
you don't have ice to take care of it.
I'm telling you, man, it all closes down. The whole we go on gridlock, and no one's going into work. It's all So there's no big ice, no ice scrapers in Houston. Now, Texas is big. North Texas is a whole different story. So
yeah.
Down where we're at, we don't. Man, I don't own an ice scraper. I don't even know if I could go buy one at Ace Hardware. I don't think they sell them. So
I doubt
market.
Amazon.
Yeah.
So I got a question about your rub. Well, you got a rub and a brine.
Yes.
When did you bring them out, and why did you go with the Texas rib grind? Is it directed straight for ribs, or is it kind of an all-purpose?
Man, I was trying to develop a chicken rub is what I was trying to do. I wanted to develop a chicken rub, and there was a restaurant here in town that I really like their chicken, and it's a barbecue joint, and they have half chicken. They sell half chicken. It's not sauced, and it's a smoked half chicken, man. And man, I love it. So I was trying to kind of emulate that, and it's a very pepper forward half chicken, if you will. Texas likes their black pepper. So it's a very pepper forward half chicken, but it's also got some sweetness to it as well. So, but yeah, I was dinking around trying to come up with something like that because, man, I'm doing competitions and I'm like, man, I think if I could cook that half chicken and just glaze it here in Texas, man, I think you could win some stuff. So nevertheless, man, I'm playing around and I'm making my family eat it, and they're about sick of chicken, if you will. But I had a couple of ribs that needed to be cooked. So I just had, this mixture that I mixed there at the house. I went ahead and threw it on these ribs as well as the chicken. And man, my daughter just tore into the ribs. She said, man, these are the best ribs I've ever had, and it didn't taste anything like it did on the chicken. Right. So I was like, so I got into the ribs and sure enough, man, these things are really good. And it was just one rub, so that kind of led to that. And I thought, well, shoot. Then, I got with my buddy Phil. We went out to his ranch or his place and, he's got several products, if you will. So we kind of, got his opinion. We went there and, me and him, we cooked up a bunch of ribs with my rub as well as his rubs and stuff. And, man, his wife was all over it. She said, man, I think this is a freaking winner. You need to do it, so they were very encouraging as well. He's a good friend of mine. But yeah, just kind of sprung from there. And man, I lost my job during COVID. So it was like, man, and I'm having some success on the circuit, man, let's try to capitalize. And, man, I was trying to turn barbecue into a business, if you will. Some people I think are like, man, not trying to. Man, I was. If I can sell some stuff and make some money and not have to go get a real job, man, I'm in. So, and so far it's done well for me, So, but yeah, I need to get off my ass and do more and get more rubs out there. It's just that I compete just about every weekend, and man, I really don't want to put a rub out there that I'm not using, because that's the other advantage. If it's rubs that I'm using, man, it costs me a lot less to compete because I'm using my own stuff. So, so even my desire to win, some of the stuff I don't want to change, because man, I don't want to test a new product on the circuit. Man, they got a $20,000 purse. I want to win. So, this weekend I've got a sweet rub that I'm working on, and man, I was like, should I try it on my ribs? Should I not try it on my? Man, I'm just gonna go with the staples because, man, I really want to win. And I didn't try it, and I said, man, you need to just do it at the house, So, and I ended up getting a 9th rib. But had I used mine, man, I could have got 100th, or I could have got, first. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I wasn't willing to try it just yet. So my hesitation is some degree is trying it, because if I do come out with a product, man, I want it to be something I'm using week in and week out. I've been using that brine week in and week out for the last 6-8 months. It's taken Old World a long time to actually get the packaging done. It's been a long time coming, but it's been something that I've been using. So,
well, that's like Aaron Stoffer. I mean, he says he uses nothing but his own stuff, and that gives some good credence to it to me, especially with what he's been doing lately.
No, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's you believe in your own stuff, then other people should give it a chance. So that.
Well, I'm using my stuff plus a whole bunch of other people's stuff, but at some point I'd like to, get to the point where, man, I'm using the majority of my stuff. So
yeah.
So I'll start the question, and I was kind of disappointed whenever I first saw your Facebook and I didn't see that the ribs came out fried like chicken, because I was really confused as to where the name Chicken Fried BBQ came from. So I need to hear this story as to where it came from.
Well, before I got into barbecue, I was doing a lot of hunting. I was bow hunting a lot, and a lot of deer hunting in Texas. I've deer hunted my whole life, and it got to the point where, man, I've killed so many deer and shot so many deer that, man, if I can't film it, I got into filming my hunts and really just filming the kill shots, if you will, being in a tripod, setting a camera up next to me and hitting record before I fling an arrow. And for one, it was a way for me to capture that and show my buddies, all my hunting buddies, hey, look, this pig I just shot or whatever. And two, man, if I had to track the animal, man, I have footage of where, which way the deer ran. So it was kind of served as two purposes, but man, I started putting them on YouTube just because it was easy to share. I'd get back to my office and upload it to YouTube. Then I can send it to people in the office, buddies of mine at the office. And it was easy just to text the YouTube link. And, but someone got in the comments and it was just under my name. It just said Bill Purvis, the YouTube channel was just my name. There wasn't any kind of professional channel. And man, I wasn't doing intros. It was strictly just basically the kill shot. It was like 20, 30 seconds long, little videos. And someone got in the comments and was like, you should be ashamed of yourself killing these animals and this, that, and the other. And some animal rights activist or something. So I was like, man, I don't know if I want my name, my own personal name, because I was a VP of a oil and gas logistics company. Man, I don't know if I want these people tracking me down at my office, and so I quickly, being that I grew up deer hunting, a lot of what we did was we would chicken fry deer meat all the time. I mean, that's how we cook. That's how we would cook tenderloin, backstrap. We'd cut it up and we'd chicken fry it. And so, man, I just called it Chicken Fried Hunter. The actual YouTube channel was called, I just changed it to Chicken Fried Hunter. And then when I went to go do my first competition, they were, man, you need a team name. I was like, man, we'll just go Chicken Fried Barbecue, because I already kind of had a name with this Chicken Fried Hunter thing. So,
well, that's
and
awesome.
at that point, I changed my YouTube name from Chicken Fried Hunter to Chicken Fried, BBQ, if you will. So,
are those old clips still out there? I love watching that kind of stuff.
The video that really got them was I went to Africa, and that was the video that really because I shot a zebra with the bow, and that was the video that it got a lot of traction because it was, man, there was like 30 zebras, and I plungered this zebra and they all ran like 40 yards. So they didn't leave. They were over this water hole. They all ran like 40 yards. And then they started, all of them, because it's a bow. It doesn't, it's not a rifle.
Yeah.
So they got spooked from the arrow. And then, man, they all started walking back towards the water hole. And by this time, I've got the bow down and I've grabbed a hold of the camera off the tripod. And I'm filming the one I shot, which is walking back to the water hole. And man, it starts to stumble and, it's losing blood and everything else. And man, it falls on the ground, it's flopping around, and finally it dies and the whole thing is there. And man, I think that's the one that really
you pulled at somebody's little heartstrings there.
That was the one that got the comments. And,
that's
but man, what a lot of people don't know, being in South Africa, man, they look at those zebras as, like the Australians look at kangaroos, or just pests. Or what we look at hogs, because they, the zebras will take over your land and they'll eat all your stuff, and then you won't have any other animals, because the zebra's appetite is huge. So there are ranchers and farmers out there paying people just to come in and kill the damn zebras, because man, the zebras will just take over. Man, you won't have any deer, you won't have any, black buck, any kind of antelopes. It's the zebras will just mow the place. So so they're super cheap. And in fact, when we were there, they were like, man, if you don't want to keep the zebra skin or the mount, you can shoot the zebras for free. We don't care. We don't want them. The only reason why they wanted them, like they were like, we'll sell the hides. They had somebody that would buy the hides off of them, and somebody that would buy the mounts off of them. But man, if you didn't want any part of the zebra, man, you could shoot them for free just so they could get rid of them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, question in the comments: can you chicken fry a zebra?
Man, you probably could. I probably won't, but you probably could.
Are they gamey like deer?
I've never had them, but I tell you what, some of our comps down here, we have a lot of wild game as jackpots, and so we'll get a lot of contests that do have, a wild game element of it. And there's guys that go in there. Man, I don't do it because it's bad karma. I don't really participate in the wild game sector. If I'm just there I want grand, and if it doesn't count towards grand, man, 9 times out of 10, I'm not messing with it. But I know buddies that have gone in and, man, they've taken a fillet and cooked a fillet or a ribeye and cut it up and stuck it in the box. And, they end up getting first place because it ain't a zebra. It's a freaking ribeye,
Yeah.
And, they don't have forensics in there like, in the judging tent going, man, that kind of looks like beef, Well, what'd you cook? Man, it was zebra, and everybody knows it wasn't zebra, so except for, the judges, I guess. So,
Yeah.
So when was your first competition, or when did you start competing?
man, I think it was in 2019. I think 2019 was when I first started to dip my toe in the competition water, if you will. So we sponsored a Houston rodeo tent. The company I worked for, we sponsored a rodeo tent every year, and I would take clients down because it's a big night. It's basically a night on the town, the cook-off, the Houston Rodeo cook-off. All these tents have all these big private parties, and most Houstonians want to go down to the cook-off because it's kind of, there's 100,000 people down there all hanging out and wearing their cowboy hats for the first time in the year. So all our clients would always hit us up with, you got tickets to the cook-off. You got tickets to the cook-off, because it's just a big social outing for Houston. So we would go down there, and on Friday night, you can't even tell there's a competition. It's just nightclub after night. Every tent's a nightclub. Every tent has their own band. And so we did that for a couple of years. And the guy's tent that we sponsored would always try to talk me into, man, why don't you come do a competition with me? And that's kind of how I got in. I went to one with him that, wasn't the Houston Rodeo. It was just a regular, 40 team competition. And and he taught me some stuff, and I think I floated with him probably maybe 3 comps. And I thought, well, shit, man, I think I can do this, man. It's just, for us, it's just chicken, ribs, and brisket. And man, I grew up cooking my whole life, so I know how to cook those meats, not necessarily competition wise, but I knew how to, I knew how to cook a brisket. So, but man, I can actually throw my hand in this. And, he would have mixed results. So it wasn't like, man, I'm with him and every comp we're going to, he's winning. Man,
Yeah.
we went like one of the first ones, like, man, he didn't get a call. There's like 30 teams, and we sat on our butts the whole time. Like, shoot, man, I can go and, I can go cook and not get a call. So,
I've done that once or twice.
yeah.
So speaking of the Houston Livestock and Rodeo, what was that experience like with chicken? You want to walk us through that day? Did you knew it was good chicken, or?
And I felt like all my meats were great. I mean, there's 3 meats. I felt like, I now, it's chicken's an interesting one, much like, well, I guess not necessarily like brisket, but man, you can't taste your chicken when you turn it. It's a half chicken. So, it's kind of like cooking. You can cook 2 briskets and try one brisket and assume the other one's going to have the same tenderness, the same texture, but so you can't actually taste the one that you turn in, if you will. So, but I did cook, they tagged 2 birds or 2 halves. And man, I really thought that the one that I didn't turn in, I thought it was great. I thought the texture was great. It was exactly what I wanted. And it's just like anything else. I feel like texture and tenderness is a huge part of whether you get a call or whether you sit on your butt. Man, I think you can have great flavor on a half chicken, but if the texture's wrong, man, you could get killed. So, man, I think texture is crucial on, man, all the meats, even ribs, brisket, and all the rest of it. Flavor comes to me after texture. So, but yeah, I felt really, really good about them all. But, at the same token, it's single round judging. You don't know, in Houston, they do 5 judges. They drop your high and your low, and then they average your middle 3 and double that score. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, it's kind of, they've got their own little system that they use that's unique to them. Each judge can give you up to, with every criteria, like 5 points for appearance, 25 points for taste, and 15 points for tenderness. So it's like for taste, it's from 1 to 25. So, but if you nail every criteria, that adds up to 50.
Okay.
So the total that you can get from a judge, if you get all the taste points from him, is 25, and tenderness is 15. Man, it all adds up to 50. And like I said, they drop your high and your low and average the 3. So if you average a 40 between the 3 middle judges, they double that and your score's an 80. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, I felt good about, like I said, I felt good about all 3. And luckily enough, man, that chicken got in there, and man, I was able to walk away with a piece of hardware, which, man, the whole experience was great. You know, outside of the brisket score, everything was great. So
That's awesome.
I kind of got beat up in brisket, but man, I think there were a lot of people. You know, I finished 4th overall, which it was my first time to cook it as chicken fried barbecue. So
that's what I was going to ask next.
Yeah, man, it was not a bad finish at all. And in fact, now I've got a couple of teams that are wanting me to come cook for them next year. So which is kind of cool because, man, you can't really get into Houston. Houston's not a cook-off you can sign up for.
Mm-hmm.
It's these teams that have been there, they're legacy teams, and they keep their team. If you have a spot, or if you have 3 or 4 spots, then you can kind of pass that down to your grandkids.
Yep. Yeah.
So whether they cook or not, and there's some teams out there that really, man, they're not into competition barbecue. Their dad had that tent and been throwing parties for years and entertaining clients, and they pass it down to them. And now that's them and a group of buddies. They sell tickets to come in, and it's just a big party. And the competition is kind of like just a jackpot, you know,
Sure.
but the real part of it is, man, it's a party. So,
something I wanted to ask you about there, and you had alluded to it, and I'd heard some others talk. So they actually tag the meats that you're cooking, and that's on there until you turn it in. Is that correct? Is that what I understand?
So they have to watch you break it out of the cryovac.
Yeah.
And then they put a metal tag. You get 2 tags for brisket, 2 tags for ribs, and 2 tags for chicken. So you can only cook 2 racks of ribs. And then each team has like I said, an ambassador that writes down this metal tag. It's like a seal to a container. It's a metal seal, if you will.
Yeah.
It's got a stamped number on it. And then when they tell you your turn-in time, because every team is a little different, like one ambassador may cover 6 teams. So that ambassador will, they may tell me chicken's at 10:30. Their next team, they'll tell them 10:45, and they'll just work their way 10:30, 10:45, 11 o'clock. Because there are teams, my chicken turn-in was at 10:45, but I know teams that were turning in chicken at 11:30. So wow. They don't all turn in at the same time. And seemingly they have warmers that your food goes to when it gets turned in. So it goes into these warmers, and once they're able to judge it, they start feeding it. They don't wait till all the judges are sitting, but once they have a table of judges, they start feeding it to them. But yeah, they're there, and they watch you untag it. They verify the number. They take, big old clips to give you the big clips, and man, you cut that tag off, and they watch you slice your ribs, and they watch you. I mean, this year they allowed us to, I guess it was the first year that they allowed us to au jus and use a finish dust on, say, brisket. Huh. In years past, it was, man, you cut that brisket and you put it in the box. That's it. And they watched you. Oh, yeah. They're like, and they're just old school. It's, like I said, a lot of these guys that are running the committees, and man, they're not into, to them, it's a fundraiser. Man, they're raising millions of dollars for scholarships for kids. So, man, it's a fundraiser, and these guys are knee deep in Houston rodeo and not knee deep in actual competition barbecue, if you will.
Yeah.
So, but they're starting to, they kind of came out to a CBA event and saw some of that. So they did change the rules to where this year you could actually au jus your brisket and you could use a finished dust, but you can't sauce it. If you sauce it, it's got to be cooked on sauce. There's no, and you can't sauce your ribs or you can't sauce your brisket. It's got to be cooked on. So,
I kind of like that, though. It's different. I mean, KCBS is what I do, and it's the same all the time. But so something that's a little bit different, little different twist, different element. That's interesting. And I mean, you prove you can do it. That's the cool part, So
yeah, and it's man, it's also interesting in the sense that, man, they've got a big committee, and like I said, each ambassador kind of runs 6 teams, and sometimes different ambassadors have different interpretations of the rules. So you'll hear, oh, well, they didn't let us do anything. And, another ambassador, man, they let us do whatever we want. He was just in there drinking our beer, So depending on who you get, sometimes, I know teams that have sauced their brisket, 2 or 3 years ago because the guy they had, he didn't care. He was just there for the beer, Whereas other teams, had somebody that was, by the book, and man, they wouldn't let them. I heard this year, a buddy of mine, I guess he had his half chickens on like a cookie sheet. He'd sauced them and had them on a cookie sheet, and he was going to stick that cookie sheet with the half chickens on back on the pit to kind of set the sauce. And man, his ambassador told him, "Oh, you can't do it like that." And he's like, "Do what?" She goes, "The chicken, if you're going to cook the sauce on, the chicken has to be on the grill." He's like, "Well, the chicken's going to be on the grill. I've got it in this cookie sheet." They're like, No. It has to come off the cookie sheet, and the chicken itself has to physically touch the grill."
Oh.
So it's like I said, it's
Dang.
they've got a big, they got a lot of ropes and pulleys. Like I said, I don't know how big, and some of those guys have been ambassadors for 20 years, so they've been doing something a certain way for so long. And, if there's changes to the requirements, they may not be up to it. Now, I know what I'm doing. I've been out here for 20 years. These are going to do it this way.
Yeah.
So
what do you cook your chicken halves on? Is it a Weber kettle? Is it a drum? Is it different? Do half chickens versus thighs? Man,
I do them on. I get bored. So I will cook chicken on a Weber. I will cook chicken on a drum. If the Weber's not clean, or it's at the house and I don't feel like loading it, and I have the drums on. Sometimes I'll just cook chicken on a drum. But here lately, rodeo, I did it on a Weber, just because I've done that one as well. Similar. I got there's a video on the Barbecue League of how I put the little grill marks on and all that stuff. But the only reason why I did that is because last year I did cook chicken for a team and we got 25th, and I had the grill marks, and I was like, man, I was back and forth on whether I should do the grill marks. And I said, well, I got 25th last year. It's maybe my only time to cook Houston Rodeo under my name. Man, I want to leave with the minimal amount of regrets as possible. So, but man, I'm just going to go ahead and do the grill marks. And if I get hammered, I get hammered, but I won't leave with, if I didn't do the grill marks and got beat up in chicken, I would be kicking myself going, you dummy. You did it last year, and 25th is not bad out of 250. No. You should have just did the exact same thing. So, but I will be back to cooking thighs. I cook a lot of CBA, and to me, the thighs are a bit more consistent than the half chicken. The half chicken's a tricky one, with making sure you get the dark meat done where there's no blood in it without overcooking the breast. Yeah, that's the challenge with the half chicken.
Yeah, that is quite a challenge there, I'm sure.
Because you can get the dark meat done, but man, if you cook that dark meat to where it's completely done, and your breast could be at 175 or 180, and man, it may or may not be tender and juicy. It could be a little dry. So, and there's no Wagyu chickens available. So.
Isn't Texas or IBCA more like a tenderness? Because they use a lot of like forks. You don't just pick up a whole chicken thigh to eat it. You don't pick up a whole rib. You take a knife and a fork, saw you off a piece, and eat it.
Yeah, we cook in Texas. We don't have certified judges, so we cook to the general public. The general public is, whether it's IBCA, Lone Star, or CBA, it's all just, and it's up to the promoter, whoever the promoter of the event is. So if there's an event happening in Weatherford, Texas next weekend, which isn't a huge town, it's up to that promoter to contact the school district, get teachers, the police department, whatever organizations they can rely on or pull in judges off the street. So, and most judges off the street, when you're cooking for them, they're not trained, and they don't pick up everything as knife and fork. The way the system works, whether it's CBA or IBCA or Lone Star, it's all, the boxes get passed in front of them. They open it up. They've got disposable, knives and forks. They go into the box and it goes right to their mouth. There's no place for them to set it. They can't fish out a rib and set it on. They don't have a plate or anything. And unlike KCBS, where KCBS, you got 6 judges, they get 6 boxes. IBCA and CBA, they'll have, 6 judges, but those 6 judges may judge 12, 15 boxes to where it's just a line of boxes coming through. So there's not really a place for them to set anything down. And, some of that is, man, you don't need as many judges when you're putting that onus on the promoter to bring in the judges. You don't need a 1-to-1 judge ratio, if you will. So,
I don't know though, because if I had to try, like sometimes with 6 meats, and it's already hard to determine the difference to be able to kind of, I don't want to say because it's not comparative judging, but at the same time, it affects your palate the more you do. So after about 10 or 12 meats, I mean, I think it'd be hard to distinguish any difference between them.
Oh man, I've done it. I've judged. That was one before I ever started cooking. I judged, and I think I was at the IBCA showdown, which was 300 teams, and I was judging semi-final table brisket, and there was 15 brisket boxes that got passed around our table. And you're exactly right, man. After about 5 or 6 or 8, man, they all started tasting pretty similar. It was really kind of hard to disseminate between the two. So I personally, CBA, I think we do 12. I think that contest, man, I think IBCA, I think I judged 18 boxes. And, man, I think even 12 is a lot myself. But yeah, I mean, it's it can easily, like I said, easily go numb to your palate, if you will. And again, it's people off the street. Some people have watched barbecue pit masters, so they're looking for something with a little texture. But you don't know who you're going to get. So other people, there's been times where I've turned in tighter ribs than I wanted and thought, man, I'm screwed, and I've hit first place. There's been other times where I've completely mutilated my ribs, and I've hit first place. So it's not the dartboard isn't. You're not cooking to a spec. I mean, I want to cook them. I want to overcook them, but not to the point to where they're complete mush. I would. I want a little bit of texture, but equally so. You can get away with overcooking them a lot more, I think, in Texas than you can in other, in KCBS. So, but I've had that in KCBS too, where, my ribs were completely overcooked, and man, they've hit first place. So I think at the end of the day, sometimes taste on, if you cook I guess if you're a judge, you're a KCBS judge, man, all those guys walk in there with little coolers, man, they want to take stuff home.
Yeah.
We don't allow them to do that in Texas. And man, last thing they want to do is get in there and bite a tight rib is what I'm thinking. If I was a judge, I wouldn't want to get in there and bite some tight ass rib. So, man, I always kind of push the overside myself.
So, of all the calls in the contest you've cooked, what is the category win, the grand championship, the overall call that means the most to you?
Man, I think the most special for me, there's a bunch of them, but the most special is probably 8th overall at the Royal. And I'll tell you, the reason why is we had no calls that day. And the fun part about barbecue to me is when you get a call and you're not expecting it. Man, there are a lot of times I've cooked ribs or briskets or chicken, and I feel really good, and these guys are in trouble. And, I'm kind of expecting a call, and, they call my name, whether it's a 5th place or a 1st place or whatever. I knew my food was good. I was at the Royal, I guess it was 2 years ago. And they had, they went through, all the categories, and man, I didn't get a call in brisket, chicken, ribs, none of it. And sitting next to my wife, and she looks at me and she's like, man, and we didn't get a call on day 1 at the Invitational. So Invitational, no calls, the Open, no calls. The year before we got a 2nd chicken on the Invitational, and I think a 10th brisket on the Open. So we came home with a call each day. We were happy, but that year there was nothing. And, they're calling out the top 25, for the overall. And she's like, man, once this is over with, let's load up our stuff and let's start heading back to Texas. I don't want to go out to eat with nobody. Let's just leave, don't make any freaking plans, because, she's a little bit irritated that we didn't get any calls, and I'm, yeah, no, it's cool, babe. We'll freaking, as soon as this thing's over with the top 10, I'll go congratulate the winner and we're out of here. So I wasn't expecting a call at all. And they, started calling the top 10. They got down to 8th and they called our name. And man, I just flew out of my chair. I don't think I've ever been like more excited as far as showing emotion at awards. Usually, I kind of have this thing of act like you've been there before. If they call your name, don't act like some idiot that you're not expecting it. Well, that's exactly what I did that day, man. I was an idiot. Like I just won the lotto. And it was only 8th overall, but still it was, it's probably the biggest call that kind of got the most of my emotions out of me, if you will.
8th out of 500 teams that's a pretty good call. I mean,
yeah. Oh no, it was great. But, even this year at Houston, getting first place chicken, I made finalists and that was great. I felt good about my food and man, it kind of matched up. And I'm like, man, I'm surprised I only got finalists in one category, but man, I'll take it. I was thinking, man, how many banners you got? Because they kind of run like Memphis and May where they pass out these banners first and then getting on stage and waiting they only call the top 3. And, they obviously called me for first and it's like, well, yeah, I was kind of expecting, it was great. Don't get me wrong. It was exciting, but it wasn't like completely shock and awe. Like the 8th overall at the Royal was completely in my mind, man, we got skunked 2 days. This place sucks. Let's get out of here, and, and it went from, man, where's everybody going for dinner? I got 8th overall. Where are we going for dinner? So
dinner and drinks.
Well, that just goes to show you at the Royal being as large as it is, you just have to cook consistently. You don't have to tear the world on fire in one category. I mean, you could just cook. I mean, you could be shy of a call in all 4 categories. Ryan Kane with the Invitational last year got 1 call and then RGC'd it. I mean.
Well, did you hear the story about Tim Shear when he reserved it?
Yeah.
I wasn't there, but he had no calls and Brad had 3 calls. So they're getting down, they call out 3rd and they call Tim for a reserve grand with no calls. And there's Brad sitting with 3 calls thinking, man, me and Tim are fixing it. We're going 1-2. And then they called out, I think 9-1-3 for grand champion. And, Brad, it got sunken chicken or, like Joe got sunken ribs that one year with 3 calls, So
it can happen. It's last weekend we had Irwin's pit crew and I remember 21, they didn't get a call at all. And I think they were 13th overall and just, again, blew them away and just that consistency in there. So.
And last year I had 2 calls. On the Invitational, I had I think a 10th place brisket. And on the Open, I had a 6th place 180 pork and a 25th place brisket. So I had our 23rd place brisket. Man, I had 2 calls on the Open with 500 teams. And I'm like, man, I could be in this, and they're going down. And, obviously Janky and Machete Boys ended up being the winners of that deal. But I'm sitting there with 2 calls thinking, and last year I had no calls. I was 8th overall. Now I've got 2 calls. Where am I going to land? And I think I was 40th or 50th overall because ribs were like 409th or 410th. So
let's not talk about that scoring. So
yeah, I got jingled on the ribs. So, but it is what it is,
So here's another question, real quick. Do you like the contest where you made finals to where you're going to get a certain place at least, or would you rather have it like KCBS where it's just announced all at once?
Man, I love it where where you don't know. Man, I think that's when I won San Antonio Rodeo, it was Lone Star, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Lone Star or IBCA and how the points work. If you get a first place in any of the meets, you get 10 points. If you get a second place in any of the meets, you get 9 points. And it works its way down to 10th place is only worth 1 point. So I had gotten a second place. I think there was a 3rd place brisket and a 5th place rib. So I knew when I got that 3rd place brisket, I knew I was in the lead. I already knew no one had as many points as I had. Now I just have to get around 2 different calls. I had to get around second place and make sure that whoever got first place chicken didn't get second place brisket, or whoever got first place ribs didn't get second or first place brisket. So they ended up calling out second place brisket, and it was AJ, and he hadn't had any walks. So I knew, okay, that doesn't hurt me.
Mhm.
And then I had one more call, and I'm walking back, and there's 315 teams. And man, I'm walking, I hadn't even made it back to my chair because they're so big. And they call out first place brisket, and they just call out the ticket numbers. And I see it's Aaron Leslie with Texas Oil Dust, and he hadn't had any calls. So at that moment, before I came back to my seat, I already knew I'd GC'd the contest, because you can do and everybody at my camp knew it as well. So they're all congratulating me, high-fiving me, and they're not even calling out the top 10 yet. They hadn't even progressed to that part. So I much prefer the suspense and not knowing, where everybody sits down and, man, let's call out the top 10. And CBA's like that because it's cumulative. And man, you don't know what, if you're 11th, it's just like KCBS, and you could get in there. So, and I've seen contests like that, So.
It allows everybody to, whatever place they do finish, they get to enjoy it versus, I already know where I finished, and so that kind of defeats that.
I would have much rather San Antonio Rodeo when I won it, because it was probably one of my biggest wins. It probably is. It's the second for us in Texas. Most of your comp cooks look at San Antonio as kind of like the American Royal, if you will.
Yeah, because
none of them can cook Houston. Houston is just a bunch of legacy backyard teams, if you will. And to go to San Antonio, that's where all the comp guys are cooking. And man, it's the biggest one with 300 plus teams. So that's the one all the comp guys want to win that one. I mean, Houston's kind of we don't get to cook it. We just don't get to cook it. So if you do cook it, you're a hired gun for somebody else. And a lot of times they're the ones walking on stage. Robert Smith cooked brisket for a team last year, and they only let one person go on stage. So it's usually the guy that owns the tent that's, man, I'm paying $100,000 for this tent and all this beer. My ass is going to be on stage, Yeah. So San Antonio is the one that, like I said, a lot of folks that are in Texas regard as, man, our biggest event, if you will. And, man, I would have much rather won that not knowing I was going to be the winner until after they called, RGC, and they announced the name, So.
That makes sense. That's kind of how I'd be too.
Yeah.
I want to change the gears for a second. We've had a lot of good comps, good talks. I want to ask everyone here, and I'm really a big one at it. What have you forgotten at a comp that means the most? Me, easy. Wire racks, thermometer, cutting board, sauce. Out of you three, what's the biggest one that you guys have forgotten at a competition?
I haven't forgot it, but my lighter to light my charcoal wouldn't work because it was too cold at the Royal.
I don't know. I've forgotten a variety of things, but I think at the year I won pork at the Royal, I actually forgot my syrup, and I had to go borrow it. And Philip Hood reminded me of that every comp after that. I gave you that syrup. Did you remember what syrup I gave you? Like, yep, I remembered, Philip. I remembered. Kevin hasn't forgotten syrup again for pork at the Royal or any comp. So,
well, I'm kind of a pack rat, so I have all kinds of shit in my trailer, and it drives my wife crazy because I'll buy more syrup, and she's like, "We have syrup in the trailer," but every, and I mix everything. I mix everything. All my injections I mix on site. And, my trailer's here at my house. It's plugged in. I've got the air conditioning running. So, man, I keep all my rubs. Everything is in the trailer, plus so much more. So there's not, man, I think one time I did forget or ran out of my rib rub, my base coat for my rib rub and my pork. And, man, I didn't have anything, but I got so much other junk that teams have given me, and and man, I threw some other stuff on it, and it ended up hitting first place. And I was like, maybe I ought to start using this more often, but usually I'm overstocked with anything and everything. And
If you have one of it, you got to have 5 of it. Is that the philosophy? That's
man, I'm under lockdown on buying stuff. You know, it's like you have enough syrup, you have enough barbecue sauce. You don't need more Blues Hall containers. We've got them everywhere. They're stashed. You know,
You're set to
I
open
guess
a
I have a
restaurant
fear
already.
I think I have a fear of, man, I'm not going to have enough, or I'll buy consomme. You know, I'll buy beef consomme, right? And then I'll go buy new ones for that week. And she's like, "Okay, you're going to use these?" I go, "Man, those are kind of old. I think I should use the new ones." She's like, "Well, why are you leaving it in the trailer if you're not going to use it? You know, man, you never know. A team might need to borrow it or whatever. But man, I'm going to use the fresh stuff I just bought. You know,
of course.
I
Well,
do
there
that
was a
same
time
thing.
during the pandemic. There was a time when you couldn't find consomme for a while.
You got that
so-
right.
Yes.
You got that
Yeah.
right.
Well, Bill, we want to thank you for coming on tonight. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
No, well, thanks
Yes.
for having me, guys, for sure, man.
We love talking barbecue.
Hell yeah. No,
This
it's
summer,
great,
when
man.
I hit Houston, I'm going to look for that food truck out there somewhere.
Everybody thinks it's a food truck, that's for sure. You know, they'll every competition, man. They see the chicken fried barbecue. They want something chicken fried, you know. And I break their hearts and tell them it's just my team name. I'm not chicken frying anything today, you know.
Your next competition, throw a menu board out that says Chicken Fried Zebra, $9.99.
Oh, I tell you what, I did a contest, and I think it was Sip and Swine or no, this Festival of Discovery out in South Carolina, where you had to do People's Choice. They made me do People's Choice.
Oh.
You know, that was the only spot they had, and I'm like, man, I got 4 drums. I can't cook like all this extra food. And they're like, man, just cook your leftovers. Just give them your leftovers. That's all you need to do. And they'll put these little tickets in there. And so I'm like, okay, I trimmed my brisket a little bit bigger. That way I'd have leftovers, you know, and I cooked an extra rack of rib. Man, I had a mile. I mean, it seemed like a line forever, people coming. And I think they were all like wanting something chicken fried. And I'm just handing them I didn't have boats or anything. Here's a napkin. You know, I had rubber gloves on, just peeling a piece of brisket, putting it on a napkin and giving it to them. I wasn't set up for any kind of People's Choice. And all I had was paper towels and, you know, rubber gloves. So, but yeah, they were all, well, you got chicken fried? No, it's just my competition food. Here you go. You know, put your tickets in the bucket or whatever. So.
That's great.
It's hilarious.
Well, hopefully we get to see you up in the Kansas City area at a comp here one of these this season here. I don't know if you work your way up here besides the Royal at all.
Nah, mainly the Royal. I mean, there's so much stuff happening in Texas. I may go to the Invitational in Tennessee.
Yeah,
I may do that guy. You know, are you guys going to go to it, or?
I think
I'm going to try to.
Bradley's going to that. Yeah.
I'm going to try to go to that. If I need to sit down and kind of iron out. You know, I'm usually week to week knowing where I'm going and getting a kitchen pass from the wife. So, but it's on my radar. Just got to see if it's on her radar. You know.
There you go.
It was a good time last year, and I've heard the venue in Tennessee is a really good spot.
Yeah, I've heard that too. You know, so
Yeah,
it'll be
I've thought
fun.
about it. It's not my favorite contest, but it is illustrious because it's the Invitational. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. So,
All right. Well, have a good evening, Bill. Thank you very much.
yes, thanks for
Appreciate
coming
you.
on.
thank you guys. Appreciate it, man.
Yep,
All
see
right.
ya.
We'll see
Take
ya.
care. Bye-bye.
Yep.